بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. What about we up to more?
The beginning of the fasl, and then the beginning after.
فصل
This fasl.
إذا ثم أقول بعد هذه الجملة
وعلى وجه آخر.
أوكي. قال الإمام حجة الإسلام الغزالي رحمه الله ونفعنا به وبكم وعلى وجه آخر. الملك العظيم إذا أذن بإدخال الهدايا إليه فيدخل بحضرته الأمراء والكبراء والرؤساء والنبلاء والأغنياء بأنواع الهدايا من الجواهر الثمينة والذخائر النفيسة والأموال الجليلة. فإن جاء يقال بقال بباقة بقل أو قروي بسلة عنب تساوي دانقا أو حبة فيدخل في حضرته ويزاحم أولئك الأكابر والأغنياء بهداياهم الكثيرة الشريفة، وهذا الملك يقبل من هذا الفقير هدية وينظر إليه بنظر القبول والرضا ويأمر له بأنفس خلعة وكرامة، ألا يكون منه ذلك غاية الفضل والكرم. So Imam Ghazali says, to take another example of how deficient our actions are and how great is Allah's generosity, because the whole thing here is just to remind us, to prevent us from falling into ujub, to prevent us from falling into feeling proud of our actions, or thinking that by doing good actions we've done a great thing, a great favor to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's giving different examples, So he says, imagine there was a king, a great king, and people are coming to this king and giving him, many gifts. So great leaders, governors, these type of people are coming in, and they're giving him all of these very precious gifts, jewels, other precious gifts. And then someone comes in like a villager or a cabbage merchant or something, and they give him like just some very cheap, like say a basket of grapes, which is only worth very little. That's like us bringing our actions into Allah's presence, because in Allah's presence, like we said, saying last week, He's got the great angels, Jibreel alayhi salam, Mikael, Azrael. You have all the great prophets and the Rusul, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of these great people and angels are in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then look at us coming with our actions. But at the same time, this king, he accepts this gift of this cabbage merchant or this villager. He accepts that gift, and he looks at this person, this poor person, with qabul and rida. He's pleased with him. Wouldn't someone say that this king is being very generous, you know, and he's giving so much in return to this poor person. فإن أخذ هذا الفقير يمن بذلك على الملك ويعجب به. Then if this same poor person, this villager or this grocer, you know, is given these grapes or something to the king, if he then starts going around boasting, "Oh, I gave the king a great, you know, a basket of grapes. What a great thing I've done." Wouldn't he be such a foolish person? Huh? ويستعظمه وينسى ذكر منة الملك. And this person doesn't ever mention how generous the king was to him in allowing him to come into his presence, to accepting these gifts, which was worthless to the king, but accepting it and then in return showering him with lots of reward. Yeah? But this person goes around boasting about the gift that he gave to the king. ألا يقال هذا مجنون مضطرب العقل. We're going to say this guy is crazy, he doesn't understand anything. أو سفيه سيء الخلق عظيم الجهل. Someone who's very ignorant, of such a bad character, that's just to the extreme. فالآن إنك إذا قمت لله ليلة وصليت وركعات فإذا فرغت فتفكر كم قام لله سبحانه في هذه الليلة من الخدم. So next time you find that you've done some prayers, you know, you've prayed a few rakat of prayer, of nafal, before becoming very proud of what you've done, just think to yourself, how many great slaves of Allah have worshipped him in this same moment? You know, how many malaika have been worshipping him at this moment? في أقطار الأرض برها وبحرها وجبالها وبلادها من أصناف المستقيمين والصديقين والخائفين والمشتاقين والمجتهدين والمتضرعين. وكم حضرت في هذه الساعة بباب الله سبحانه من عبادة صافية وخدمة خالصة عن أنفس خاشعة وأبدان طاهرة وعيون باكية وقلوب عامرة وصدور تقية وأركان تقية. So imagine in that same time when you done those few rakats of nafal, imagine how many people have been worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how many people of pure heart, pure bodies, sincere worship, humbleness, people who are in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have worshipped him in such a pure fashion compared to your worship. وصلاتك إن كنت بذلت المجهود في تحسينها وأحكامها وإصلاحها فلا تكاد تصلح بحضرة هذا الملك. Even if you took your utmost efforts to purify your own prayer, it would hardly be befitting for this king, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ولا تتبين في جنب تلك الإبادات التي تعرض هنالك كيف وقد كانت منك عن قلب غافل. Your heart is always heedless during your prayer. مختلط بأنواع العيوب وبدن النجس وبأقدار الذنوب ولسان متلطخ بأنواع المعصية والفضول. You're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a heart that is heedless of remembering him, and with and full of all of these different defects, and with a body which is filthy from sins, and a tongue which has become impure by all different types of disobedience and uh, fadul, you know, vain pursuits. فكيف يصلح هذا أن أن يحمل إلى تلك الحضرة، وكيف يستهل أن يهدى إلى رب العزة. How can such a person feel that their act of worship is befitting to go to the purity of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yeah. So it's all just reminding us, to look at the defects of our own actions, to look at our own states before becoming proud of these small little good actions that we do, and thinking that we've done a great favor to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال شيخنا رحمه الله: انظر أيها العاقل هل وجهت قط صلاة من صلواتك إلى السماء كمائدة بعثته إلى بيوت الأغنياء. And one of them, one of our Shaykh, he said, think about it, O person of intelligence, think about it. When you send your prayer, when you do your prayer, you're sending your action up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have you ever thought, what you're sending to Him? So imagine you were hosting some important guests, how much you'd think about preparing the meal for them, how much care and consideration you would take in what you present before them. And think about, this is your action that you're presenting, you're sending up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How much care do you put into what that looks like? وكان أبو بكر الوراق يقول: ما فرغت من صلاة إلا استحيت منها حين فرغت أشد حياء من حياء امرأة فرغت من الزنا. One of the people of Allah, Abu Bakr al-Warraq, he said, I never completed any prayer except that I felt so ashamed. I felt so ashamed at the action. Worse than the shame felt by a woman that has just committed zina. Think about that. He was so aware of the defects of his own actions, When he completed any prayer, because he was so aware of the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was so aware of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew that the action that he did was in no way befitting for that presence, for that sacred presence. So he felt so ashamed, like worse than someone who had committed a major sin like zina. So that was to do with the strength of his ma'rifah. And we might feel it's strange, what a strange thing to say, but it's not strange for those people who have that strength of ma'rifah. That's why some of the scholars, they said, the good deeds of the people of the right hand are the bad deeds of the people who are close to Allah. You have the people of the right hand, say Surah Al-Waqi'ah. You have the people of the right hand, they're the general believers, general Muslims and believers who go to Jannah. And then you have the Muqarrabeen, those people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're the elite of the believers. Surah Al-Waqi'ah is very clear about that, You have three categories of people. People of the left hand, which are the people of the fire. People of the right hand, which are the people of Jannah, the general believers. And then you have the Muqarrabun, those who are close to, literally close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So read Surah Al-Waqi'ah. So the scholar said that the good deeds of the people of the right hand are the bad deeds of the people who are close to Allah. So for the people of the right hand, if they done these prayer, they would be like, I've done a good deed. They'd feel happy. For the people who are close to Allah, that same prayer that person had done, they would consider it to be a sin. Because they consider it to be so impure and unbefitting. Because of their heedlessness in it. You know? How often do we pray and all of our concentration throughout the whole prayer that we're in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yeah? So you know, if we're praying, it's like, imagine you're speaking to someone and the person, but you're speaking to him but he's looking the other way, or he's doing something else, or he's talking to someone else, or he's, you know, nowadays texting someone else at the same time, which most husband and wives argue about. And why are you always texting people? That's disrespect, you know, you're going to feel a type of disrespect. Now, when you're in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're praying, He is now in direct communication with you, but then we're like thinking about other things, you know. I teach in class with the school kids, you know. The thing that really irritates a teacher is when the school kids, which they do tend to do, they are the daydreaming, you know, they start, you know, doing other things, fiddling about, you know. So you're in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in prayer, you're in a direct communication, and then you're just, you know, thinking about, oh, I need to wash my car. Car's worried, I need to take it to a car wash, I need to, what about my business, you know. So all of us have this problem in our prayer, you know, including myself. So we have to improve our prayer. So we don't, sure, you know, imagine that is such a disrespect. So um, that's how these people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they feel that their prayers are deficient always.
Is it allowed to pray again? I mean, if you're not satisfied from, let's say, 2 rakah, and then you say, okay, I mean, you know that it's not right. So
Yeah.
is it allowed to?
If it's fard prayer, according to the fiqh, you can't really pray again. According to the fiqh. If it's nafal, of course, you can always repeat sunnah or nafal, you can always repeat them. The fard prayer, according to the fiqh, once you've prayed that, it's done. You know, you've completed that. Whether you are concentrating or not, the prayer is complete. So, strictly speaking, according to the Islamic law, the fiqh, it would not be any. If you repeated it with the same intention for fard, it wouldn't count. The first one would count. But obviously, that's just, you know, the law, the letter of the law. You know. But like Imam Ghazali, actually, he was one of those who said if you don't concentrate on prayer, you should repeat it. But he went against the most of the fuqaha because he was thinking more from the spirit of the law, you see. The Prophet ﷺ, you know, there is a hadith, it's based on as well, Sahih hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ saw a man praying in the masjid, and he said to him, pray again, you have not prayed. He said to pray again, you have not prayed. So he made him repeat the prayer because the man was praying very quickly, you know. So there is a basis for repeating it, but according strictly to the fiqh, which is, if you ask a question, I have to answer according to fiqh, you know, is the fard prayer is not repeated, but any other prayer can be. But if you didn't complete the prayer and you felt like you want to start again, then you could.
Even breaking it, then
Yeah. But once it's completed, it's completed. You can't repeat fard. You know, it's already completed. But yeah, you can always break it and start again. However, I would only recommend to do that if if it's like rarely, it happens rarely, you know. Like most of your prayers you're happy, but then say now and then you feel no, today I need to just start the prayer again, you know. That's fine. But don't, if it becomes like every prayer you start repeat it, then repeat it, then it's not recommended to do that, because then you can make the deen too difficult for yourself. You know, you shouldn't make things difficult for others. Shaitan can also try to do waswasa, you see. He tries to then make you keep repeat the prayer. Um, and that can become worse. So only if it's done like rarely, you know, once in a while you feel, no, I really should repeat that prayer, then it's okay. Or it shouldn't be done like every day. Um, if sisters have any questions, feel free to, you know, put your head around the corner and ask a question, or if you prefer to write it down and pass, you can as well. ثم إن الرب الكريم سبحانه بمحض كرمه وفضله عظم قدر هاتين الركعتين ووعد عليهما من جزيل الثواب ما وعد. So despite the deficiency of these two rakats you've prayed, despite all of the defects and the heedlessness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so generous that He's accepting it still from us, you know, and giving us all of this reward that He's promised for these prayers. وأنت عبده وفي جرايته. You are His slave. You're being paid a salary from Him, you know, your rizq. وأملت ما أملت بتوفيقه وتيسيره ثم مع ذلك تعجب بذلك. And the two rakats you did from with His tawfiq, you know. It was through His tawfiq that you did it in the first place. Look how many people there are who aren't doing prayers, you know. And then on top of all of that, you actually feeling proud of this action. وَتَنْسَى مِنَّةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكَ, and you've forgotten that Allah is the one who's given all of these blessings to you. هذا والله عجب الأجب لا يكاد يذهب مثله إلا عن جاهل لا فكر له. So he says, if you think about it really in this way, this is like the worst type of ignorance. Yeah, no one who can really reflect upon could feel that they're doing such a big favor to Allah, or they're doing something so great by doing these prayers. وغافل لا ذهن له وقلب ميت خاو لا خير فيه. هذه نسأل الله حسن السلامة بمنه وفضله. Well, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the best type of peace and security and tawfiq through His generosity. فصل في دعوة إلى التيقظ من الغفلة إلى لاجتياز عقبة القوادح. So don't forget, we're talking now about the stage of the qawadih, those things which detract from our worship. And this is the penultimate stage, the final stage, the seventh one, is going to come next. So this is the stage where someone has fought against their nafs, fought against the love of the world, fought against the shaitan, tried to keep away from bad company, has kept good company, has trusted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his rizq and for everything, and established himself on a state of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now he's come to this stage where he has to beware from these things, Riyaa and Ujub, showing off in good actions and feeling proud of one's good actions. Because these will detract from the full ibadah, from the full ikhlas, from the full reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says in summary, ثم أقول بعد هذه الجملة تيقظ من رقدتك أيها الرجل في هذه العقبة وإلا كنت من الخاسرين. So he says, I say, O person, wake up, wake up from your slumber in this stage, otherwise you will be one of the losers. فإن هذه العقبة أشد وأشق وأمر وأضر عقبة استقبلتك في هذه الطريق. So it says this particular stage is one of the most difficult and the most bitter and the most harsh stages that has so far come upon you in your spiritual path. إذ إليها تنتهي ثمرة كل ما مضى من العقبات. Why? Because all of that, effort you've gone through so far to get to this point, it could all be ruined and lost if you're unable to get away from Riyaa and Ujub. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. فَإِن سَلِمْتَ غَنِمْتَ وَرَبَحْتَ. If you are able to get through this, save yourself from showing off and Ujub, then you will get the full reward of all of the struggle that you've been through. وإن كانت الأخرى فقد ضاع السعي كله وخاب الأمل وبطل الأمر. Otherwise, if you fall into this trap, then you've wasted your effort and all of your time that you've spent in trying to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you've deviated at this point because you've started worshipping people again. Because that's what Riyaa is worshipping people. Because you're no longer doing it for the sake of Allah, you're doing it because of what people say about you. You're doing it for a certain reputation. You're doing it for a certain status. This guy's a religious guy. He goes to the masjid. He goes to darses. He's got a lot of knowledge. So you've fallen from sincere worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to worshipping once again people. This brother went for jihad. ثم الشأن كله أن قد اجتمع في هذه العقبة هاهنا ثلاثة أمور هي أن الأمر دقيق جدا والغبن شديد والخطر عظيم. So there's three things we can mention here to do with this particular stage. Is that first of all, it's a very fine line. It's a very fine line to tread between falling into showing off and ujub and between being on the straight path and doing things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the dangers of this stage are very great. Because this is where we see many people who are outwardly religious, but they've fallen astray on this point. Many people we see in the masjid with long beards, big miswaks, short trousers, long prayers, long recitation of Quran, but they fall in the, like the Prophet ﷺ said, they recite the Quran, but it doesn't go beyond their throat, doesn't get to the heart, in other words. They will pray, and you will think that your prayer is nothing compared to their prayer. Yeah? But the Prophet ﷺ said, Iman leaves them as fast as an arrow leaving a bow. In other words, they have no Iman, they're far, far from Iman. People that you see praying and you think that your prayer is nothing because of their prayer is so long and so recitation is so perfect. You will feel your prayer is so. These are people, they have no Iman though. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. This is why this stage is so dangerous. Like once Imam Ghazali is attributed to him saying sarcastically, the longer the beard, the less the Iman. The longer the beard, the less the taqwa. So this is, a big problem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. If Allah doesn't save us or give us tawfiq, we can't get through that stage. We can't do it from our own selves. We have to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask for His help. أما دقة الأمر فإن مجاري الرياء والعجب في الأعمال دقيقة حقيقة بالعناية فلا يكاد يتنبه لذلك إلا كل نحرير في أمر الدين بصير بيقظان القلب متحرز وأن يتلئ عليه الجاهل واللعوب والغافل النؤوم. First of all, that this matter is very, very fine line to tread. Only someone who's very alert to these dangers will pick them up. Someone whose heart is awake and whose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him guidance, a spiritual basira. The normal person who is not really even alert or aware of these subtle issues is never going to even be able to get through this stage. ولقد سمعت بعض علمائنا رحمهم الله بنيسابور يحكي أن عطاء السلمي رحمه الله نسج ثوبا فأحكم وحسنه جدا ثم حمله إلى السوق فعرضه فاستخرصه البزاز. Imam Ghazali said, I heard from one of the sheikhs in Naysabur. He mentioned that Ata as-Sulami, rahimahullah, once stitched a garment. He stitched a garment. He wasn't a tailor himself, but he stitched this garment put this garment together and made it to the extreme beauty that he could possibly get to. And then he took it to the marketplace to sell. But one, there was a proper, there was a bazaar, someone who's an expert in cloths, buying and selling cloths. And he put a low price on the garment. وقال إن فيه عيوبا كيت وكيت فأخذ وأتاء وجلس يبكي بكاء شديدا. And this merchant said to him, "Oh, it's not very good. It's got this defect and that defect." Ata al-Sulami took the garment, went down and sat down and started crying very excessively. فندم الرجل على ذلك وجعل يعتذر إليه. The cloth merchant, seeing that he's gone, sat down, start crying excessively, felt very bad about what he had said. And he went up to him and started saying, I didn't really mean it and everything. وَيَبْذُلُ لَهُ فِي ثَمَنِهِ مَا يُرِيدُ. And he said, don't worry, I'll pay you, I'll give you more money for it. And, I was just... فقال عطاء ليس ذلك ما تظن. Ata al-Sulami said to him, it's not what you're thinking, I'm not crying because you criticized the thing that I made. إنما أنا عامل في هذه الصناعة وقد اجتهدت في إحكام هذا الثوب وإصلاحه وتحسينه حتى لا يوجد فيه به عيب فلما عرض على البصير بعيوبه أظهر فيه عيوبا كنت عنها غافلا. He said, no, I'm not crying because of that. It's because I made this garment to the best of my ability and I felt that there was nothing wrong with that. I thought it was very well made. But when it was showed to someone who is an expert in that trade, that expert was able to point out so-and-so defect and so-and-so defect that I had no idea even existed. فكيف أعمالنا هذه إذا أُرِضت غدا على الله سبحانه كم يبدو فيها من العيوب والنقصان. So I started thinking, how about all of my actions that I do, all of these acts of ibadah? I think they're so perfect. But tomorrow when they come in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how many defects will come out of them? الذي نحن اليوم عنها غافلون. That today we have got no idea how many, we just haven't thought that there might be so many defects in these actions. وعن بعض الصالحين قال كنت ليلة في وقت السحر في غرفة لي في غرفة لشارعة أقرأ سورة طه فلما أن ختمتها غفوت غفوة فرأيت شخصا نزل من السماء بيده صحيفة فنشرها بين يدي فإذا فيها سورة طه وإذا تحت كل كلمة 10 حسنات مثبتة إلا كلمة واحدة فإني رأيت مكانها محوا ولم لم أرى تحتها شيئا. So he says, one of the righteous people said, one night at the time of Sahur, he was reciting Surah Taha. And after he finished reciting it, he saw in a dream a man coming down from the heaven carrying a sahifa, like a book or a scroll. And he opened up the scroll in front of him. And in it was written Surah Taha, and after each word was written 10 hasanat. Except for one of the words. Except for one of the words. Which was actually erased. He couldn't see, well, under that one word, under all of the words said 10 hasanat, but under one word there was nothing, there was a blank. فَقُلْتُ وَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ قَرَأْتُ هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَةِ. He said, Wallahi, I did recite that word as well. I didn't miss it out. وَلَا أَرَى لَهَا ثَوَابًا. But I don't see any reward for that one. Because you know the Prophet ﷺ said for each letter of the Quran there's 10 rewards. وَلَا أَرَاهَا أَثْبَتَتْ. فَقَالَ الشَّخْص صَدَقْتَ. He said, yeah, I don't see that I got any reward written for that one. So the person with the scroll said to him, you're correct, you told the truth. قد قرأتها وكتبناها إلا أن سمعنا مناديا من قبل العرش أمحوها وأسقطوا ثوابها فمحوناها. So this person who had bought the scroll said, yes, you did recite it, and we wrote down the reward for you for that word as well. But when we wrote it, then we heard a voice coming from the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, erase that. Erase the reward for that word. So we erased it. قال فبكيت في منامي فقلت لما فعلتم ذلك. So he says, in my sleep, in my dream, I started crying, and I said to the man, why did you do this? قالوا مر رجل فرفعت. So مر رجل فرفعت صوتك لأجله فذهب ثوابها فهذه. So then the angels, obviously there were the angels in his dream, explained to him. At that point, someone was passing by nearby to where you were, and you raised your voice so that that person could hear you reciting the Quran. So that's why you lost the reward for that word. You raised your voice, in other words, so that the person could hear, this guy's at night time, Sahar time, he's reciting Quran, Maybe that person will go and tell other people as well. I passed by, this person, mashallah, so religious. He's reciting Quran, before Fajr. So we have to be careful, why raise the voice? Why would you want that person to find out that you're reciting Quran at that time? وأما شدة الغبن فلأن الرياء والعجب آفة تقع في اللحظة فربما تفسد عليك عبادة 70 سنة. Now, the first point was that this is a very fine line, a very subtle matter. The second point is that the shiddatul ghabn mean that the consequences can be so severe of this thing. The consequences can be so severe. So, if we fall into this aspect of showing off, it may destroy the worship of 70 years. What do they mean by that? If we fall into just one moment of showing off, we could lose the ibadah of 70 years. Any ideas?
Shirk.
What do you mean? No.
Because you're showing off, so your intention changes from pleasing and attaining Allah's pleasure to showing others you doing it. So your intention changes, and so the conviction behind it changes also.
What about losing the bud of 70 years though?
I'm assuming if you done it to show off and you're not doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's not going to be accepted.
No, I'm saying if you just showed off for a moment,
Yeah.
but you lose ibadah for previous 70 years, you can't do.
This is about having a good ending. So, like, you said it was a great life, but if at the end you lose it, in which case. But then this is ostentation, this isn't like.
Yeah.
kufr, is it?
No.
You mean it's related to like an ayah in the Quran or just?
No, just how would you explain that?
I just come across my like.
How would you explain that? Mm-hmm.
So it's like.
So say the whole ayah again, sorry?
So فأتينا إلى ما عملوا من عمل فجعلناه هباء منثورا. So it's like everything is. Well,
No, yeah, that could be one way.
because he's saying that it's shirk, so shirk is.
Sometimes if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you displease him in a moment, it could have massive consequences, possibly. But the other possibility here could mean is you done 70 years of worship with sincerity of that worship, but then you go around telling people about that worship. You see what I mean? That 70. There's things you might have done in your past, which is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right now. But let's say you're talking to someone, you think, oh yeah, I'll tell him, I spent 5 years in Makkah Sharif doing Umrah every day. When you've done that, no one knew about it. But now you've told people, you've started showing off about that. You see what I mean? So it could then negate all of those actions. I think that's what he means here. Yeah, so it's always, once you do good actions, hide them.
Like if your intention is if you see some of your friend relatives who are in the wrong, you may not yourself be in the right one. You're supposed to be in those things. And you try to convince him, so if you tell that I am doing this, I am doing that, with the intention that maybe he's my friend or he may also start. Is that
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, that is valid intention, but that's why they said it's a very subtle, it's a very slippery, it's a very thin line. So many of these things with Riyaa can be a thin line. You have to be quite careful. But it was like they said about the ulama, that they should dress well and so on. But it can be a very fine line for them as well, between are they doing that sincerely for dawah to attract people to the deen, or are they going to fall into showing off?
No, usually that speaks from subconscious. It's not saying we do this and because subhanAllah.
Yeah, you see, they could have the intention, like the uncle was saying, they could have intention they're just trying to encourage other people to do good. But to be honest, the real pious people that I met that I consider to be pious, they never hardly said anything about what they done. They used to always tell us what their sheikhs did. My sheikh used to do this, or my other sheikh, he did this. They never told us anything from themselves. Hardly. Apart from sometime when I was sitting with one of these people, and it slipped out, he told us something. He said, I can see the light of dhikr. If someone is doing a lot of dhikr, I can see the light from that dhikr. It slipped out. I sat with this person for such a long time. He never said anything, but then it slipped out. And then at the end of that gathering, he was feeling so bad. He was saying, I've said too much today. I shouldn't have said. I've said too much. It was just in the flow of the thing. He just came out. He said the thing. So normally, they hide it. People hide it. The people that I've met. Those that talk about themselves, I did it. It's a difficult. You can't. We can't judge people. We can't say what's their intention. But people who are really fearing Allah and they want to hide that thing. They don't want to lose the reward of it. You see. Imagine they have spent 10 years doing ibadah, tahajjud every night. Why would they want to tell you and lose all of that reward? You know.
But I think it's to do with the inspiration for others and setting an example.
This
That's
is
what I
the
do
this is
personally.
the this
I
is the
will do
slippery
for other
slope. You see.
people and see, okay, mashallah, these people are doing this good thing. Let's follow him. So it's
I know, and
it's
I've
not
met
like,
some sheikhs. They will tell you what they do, and their intention is because they told me. Their intention is because the students. They don't want the students to go to other people who might be deviant, or people from other sheikhs who are not really sheikhs. So there's so many people out there now. You know. So that person might tell the student certain things that he has done, or say certain karamat that might have happened to him. But his intention is because the student should recognize who he is. So they don't need to go to other sheikhs that might not be, or Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you know, they might not be teaching a correct aqidah or correct fiqh and so on. But I think that's dangerous, you know. For me, I would consider it dangerous, but Allah knows best what's their intention, you know, between them and Allah. So that's the sort of thing, you know.
especially if you live in Pakistan, like a lot of people do bribes and everything. But then there are some people who don't do it, even they are poor. But then they express to the other people just to tell them that still this time there are a lot of people who are doing good deeds.
Mm.
And then because I saw a lot of people saying that, oh, because there's no good people around, and then they don't have an example, and it's very difficult. But when they see others doing the same like a good thing in a very hard atmosphere, so they tend to say, okay, yeah, that's fine. It really depends on people.
It depends a lot. Like we said, you know, that's why they said it's a very thin line. And but the important thing is, you know, we need to save ourselves first anyway. Before we start saving society, we want to make sure we saved ourselves, you know. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants people to know, you know, about you, or this person is, for example, doesn't take bribes, etc., He will let people know. People will find out anyway. Not necessarily you have to tell them, but at the same time, I do agree that, I mean, within society, there must be people who do amr bil ma'ruf as well. You know, we shouldn't. It doesn't mean that if we see corruption, we don't say, you know, no, we shouldn't be corrupt. No, we should say that. You know, so there must be amr bil ma'ruf. So I don't think it's this talking about that level anyway, of people doing haram. We're talking about now good actions. You know, extra nafals you might have done, or ibadat. You know, there's normally, why do we have to tell people about that? Things like taking bribes, you should speak up, you know. If you see people doing that, you should definitely speak up. In fact, it's wajib to, you know, because you come under Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. If you see people lying, cheating, we should say to them, you know, don't lie, don't cheat. And obviously, the first thing they will say if you lie and cheat yourself, well, you do it yourself, you know. So if we don't do that thing, then we are in a position to say to other people, and we should do. In fact, it's wajib to do that. You know, we should never be in a society where sin is allowed to take place and no one speaks. If we're in that state, then we as a ummah become in a very bad position. وحكي أن رجلا ضاف سفيان الثوري رحمه الله وأصحابه فقال لأهلي هاتوا التبق لا الذي أتيت به في الحجة الأولى بل الذي أتيت به في الحجة الثانية فنظر إليه سفيان فقال مسكين قد أفسد عليه بهذا حجتيه. Do you have a translation of that
Yeah.
particular thing?
It is related that a man once entertained Sufyan al-Thawri, may Allah bestow his mercy upon him, and his companions. So he said to his family, fetch the platter, not the one I bought on the first pilgrimage, but the one I bought on the second pilgrimage. Sufyan looked at him and said, poor wretch, he has spoiled his pilgrimage by saying this.
Or both pilgrimages. Is it both?
It says he spoiled his pilgrimage by this.
And I've got both, man. So you see the point, you know? He was entertaining guests, but he said to his wife, bring the one that we bought from the second pilgrimage. So he's now let them know that I've been for Hajj twice. Yeah? So Sufyan al-Thawri said now he's lost the reward for both of those Hajjs. So that's the idea, you know, you done something, he done it at the time for maybe for the sake of Allah. No one knew about this Hajj, these two Hajjs done. But now he's come back, now he's telling people for that one moment of showing off. That's what I said, for that one moment of showing off, you might lose 70 years of worship. You corrupted your intention. You know?
So even if at the time your intention was sound, and obviously you didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You did the action. So finished. And years later, you mentioned it to someone.
With the intention of showing off.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, you know, Uncle was saying, other people, you know, there could be reasons, valid reasons, and good intentions. It's not that there can't be, but just it's a subtle line. You know, we have to think really carefully before we say anything. You know, why are we saying this? Why are we telling this person about this action? You know, if there's a good reason, alhamdulillah, fine, there's no problem. But you know, why did he have to say, you know, get the pot I bought on the second Hajj? Not the one I bought on the first Hajj, you know.
Then maybe he is planning to do a Hajj group or something.
I mean, it's just a case of information. Because I had an issue
Yeah.
a couple of weeks back. I was waiting for perfume. My sister asked me, "Oh, that's very nice." I said, "Yeah, I got it from Hajj." Everyone goes on Hajj, isn't it? It's like,
Depends what was going through your mind, you know. Were you feeling that ego boost? Oh, I got it from that Hajj I did, you know.
she's done Hajj twice. So.
Then I think that even like when someone's saying this, it depends on how much awareness or the purification went into it, so he can find it by himself that it was shown up or not. Because sometimes, like,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
even the person himself would never know.
They
that
might not think about it, yeah.
If he hasn't been like through this, like whatever text or been introduced to this type of
Yeah.
things, then he will never even notice.
This is the problem, yeah. This is why it's wajib to study, you know. This
It's
science of
problem,
tasawwuf.
It's a musibah. It's not just a problem. It's this.
Of course.
The only thing you can consider these things we are discussing. There's a program comes on ARY TV, surprisingly short, Faqih. 2 weeks ago he was saying that when you go to mosque, do the Fajr namaz in the mosque. The rest of the namaz you should do at home. Now, my understanding is if you are doing the namaz in the mosque, it is observable. And he was giving the explanation, the reason is that if you do all the namaz in the masjid, apart from first, then you are trying to show others that you are in the masjid. I was a bit puzzled there.
No,
So what he was saying that the rest of the namaz you come home.
no, there is Sahih hadith about praying sunnahs at home as well. Don't make your homes into graveyards. It says in the hadith. In other words, you should do some prayers at home as well. So he is right actually, but and yeah, in fact, it's sunnah to pray some sunnahs at home, you know, and pray for it in the mosque. But however, the fuqaha, they said in today's time and age, especially for the imam, it's better to pray the sunnahs in the mosque, so that people don't just see the imam praying fard and going home. They might think they don't need to pray the sunnahs and things, you know. But actually, you know, yeah, no, he is right. It's good to pray at home as well. The Prophet ﷺ, don't make your home into graveyards. So there's prayer in the home. It brings barakah, nur. A lot of stuff come if you have a prayer in the home as well. But in today's day and age, when people have become very lazy, it's often better to pray in the masjid, the sunnahs, everything. So we make sure we pray them. But if we know if we're 100% very convinced, by the time I get home, I will still pray the sunnahs. Then if you're not the imam, that's okay. You can do that. It's good to do that as well. But if you're the imam, it's better for you to pray in the masjid, the sunnah, so people can see. Because you're sort of setting a role model for people as well. ووجه آخر في الغبن أن أقل طاعة سلمت من هذا الرياء والعجب يكون لها من الله عز وجل من القيمة ما لا نهاية لها. Now, obviously take it into what I would do is say, someone does Hajj. Like you said, nowadays, people are not even aware of these things. They're telling people, I go for Umrah every year, I do this, I do this. So, I don't think we should say, they lose all the reward. That's why this stage is called qawadih, they detract. But these type of things detract from your reward, depending on the level of showing off. The one that will fully detract from all of the reward possibly is when your initial intention is totally wrong. From the beginning, the only reason you done the Umrah or the Hajj or whatever is just for people, what they're going to say about you, and you have no intention of doing it for the sake of Allah. Of course, that's complete shirk, in your actions, and you wouldn't expect any reward. But if people done sincere worship and then later on they mention it to people, you're detracting from the full reward of that, and Allah knows best, how much He will accept, of that. على ما روي عن علي رضي الله عنه أنه قال لا يقول لا يقبل لا يقبل عمل مقبول البتة، أو لا يقول لا يقول له لا يقبل عمل.
Maybe لا يقل عمل مقبول.
Yeah, that's true. لا يقل عمل مقبول البتة. وكيف يقل عمل مقبول? How do you translate it? Ali, what did Ali say?
It is reported that Hazrat Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, once said, an accepted deed is absolutely not of little value. How can an accepted be of little value?
Oh, yes, yeah. So, in other words, if it is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it's a small deed, it will not be small, is what he's trying to say. In other words, the challenge we have is for our action to be accepted by Allah, even if it's a small action, to make the ikhlas, the pure sincerity within the action. Even if a small thing is accepted, it's not a small thing, it becomes a very big thing. So that's what you're saying just before that as well. If we have any act of worship which does not have any Riyaa and Ujub in it, and then it has got a huge worth, a huge value, a huge status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we ever have opportunities to do an act of worship which doesn't involve anyone knowing about it, we should try to take those chances, try to get those opportunities. وسئل النخعي عن عمل كذا وكذا ما ثوابه فقال إذا قبل لا يحصى ثوابه. Once a Nakhai, was asked about certain action, what's the reward for this action or that action, sadaqah or fasting, etc. He said, if it is accepted, then there's no limit to the reward of it. Yeah, if it is accepted, there's no limit to the reward of it.
This is not the same. This is not Ibrahim Nakhai. It's different. Yeah.
I was about to say Ibrahim al-Nakhai, but it perhaps maybe isn't. I'm not sure. Is there anything in your footnote? Or? Ibrahim, yeah. Ibrahim al-Nakhai, but I think there's more than one Ibrahim al-Nakhai as well. So another one you're thinking is Abu Hanifa's teacher's teacher.
He's a student of Abdullah bin Masud.
Student of Abdullah ibn Masud. He's the grand Shaykh of Abu Hanifa, and one of the most knowledgeable people of his time, Ibrahim al-Nakhai. And in fact, Shaykh Akram Nadwi was saying to me, if you look at the opinions of Abu Hanifa, he almost always the same as the opinion of Ibrahim al-Nakhai. So very much the opinions of Abu Hanifa are from Ibrahim al-Nakhai, who was his teacher's teacher.
Is he an Arab?
I'm not sure. He's in Kufa, but I'm not sure if he was Arab or Persian. It's one of the this is one of the things that Hadith scholars mainly specialize in, is to know who names refer to. Can be very complicated, and there's all books, dictionaries of names of scholars and what tabaqat. When it becomes difficult is when you have more than one person by the same name and from the same tabaqa, from the same generation, which can, if you think about it, happen quite a lot. Like Muhammad, Abul Hassan Muhammad, or Ali, or those names are very common. So sometimes you can have like 4 or 5 people of the same name, of the same generation. And then when they refer to in books, it's quite tricky sometimes to figure out who exactly they're referring to. So it's a whole science in itself. Hadith scholars like Shaykh Akram Nadwi, that's the thing they specialize in. One of the things they specialize in is knowing the names of narrators. وعن وهب قال كان قبلكم رجل عبد الله 70 عاما صائما يفطر من سبت إلى سبت فطلب إلى الله تعالى حاجة فلم تقضى. So the Wahhab narrated that before you, meaning before the Muslims, the Ummahs before us, there was a man who worshipped Allah for 70 years, fasting 1 week at a time. So fasting for a whole week and then breaking the fast, and then fasting again for a whole week and worshipping Allah continuously. And then one day after 70 years, he asked Allah for something, but it wasn't given. It wasn't given. فأقبل على نفسه وقال وقال من قبلك أتيت لو كان عندك خير لقضيت حاجتك. فأنزل الله تعالى ملكا فقال يا ابن آدم ساعتك التي أرضيت بنفسك خير من عبادتك التي مضت. Can you translate that for us, please, Tamil, that story?
According to Wahab, among those before your time, there was a man who worshipped Allah for 70 years, fasting without breaking, fast from Saturday to Saturday. Then he asked Allah to satisfy a need, but it was not satisfied. So he reproached his lower self, saying, I have been ruined by you. Had there been any goodness to your credit, your need would have been fulfilled. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then sent down an angel who said, O son of Adam, the moment when you rebuked your lower self is worth more than your previous worship for 70 years.
Yeah, so just a story, just illustrating that it's not actually the worship, it's not the outward worship that's important. Huh? It's looking into the inner, to the nafs, to the self, to look at these things. What's our intention? Where's our ikhlas? You know, after the Sahaba, after the Sahaba, there came people in the next generation that were worshipping Allah very excessively. And some of the Sahaba actually used to say, we didn't worship Allah like this. So the Sahaba were given something. Remember the Prophet ﷺ said, if you people give a whole mountain of gold in sadaqah, it won't be the same as one of my Sahabi giving just a few dates in sadaqah. So it's to do with the ikhlas, it's to do with the sincerity of that worship. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was given that huge status not because of his excessive ibadat, but because of his ikhlas and sincerity.
There was a story where someone narrates a dream about Imam Shafi rahimahullah, and he's died, and he's asked the guy who has the dream of him, asked him, where are you? And he goes, I'm in heaven. And he said to him, did you get to heaven because of you being a great faqih and a great imam? And he said, no, it's because I used to send salawats on Rasul 100 times a day.
Yeah, so it could be any action. You don't know which action is accepted, which has got ikhlas in it. So that's the important thing, to look within the nafs, look at our intentions, and studying these, texts of the tasawwuf. That's the purpose of them, is to start making us introspective. Start thinking. Even if we start thinking about these things, that's a great step forward. Because most people haven't got to the stage of even thinking about their intentions. Even though in the books of hadith they always start with إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The scholars have put those hadith there to start their books for a reason. But nowadays, we're very heedless of these type of things. So it's to do with the ikhlas, not to do with the outward actions. But to get to the state of ikhlas, we have to do outward actions. And we don't get to ikhlas by sitting around saying Iman is inside, brother. To get to ikhlas, you have to do the outward actions. We have to do what's called mujahada, struggle, strenuous, a lot of outward actions to get to the state of ikhlas. Like gold is tested in fire, Like Imam Jalaluddin Rumi said about the chickpeas boiling in the kettle, in the pot. The chickpeas, he said, you're going through this pain. Don't complain about the pain you're going through, the boiling, because we're making a delicious dish out of you. So that's the mujahada. To get to ikhlas, it's not going to come through just sitting around and saying we don't have to do outward actions. Outward actions are not very important. It's through the outward actions that the ikhlas will come. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees the person making the effort to come to Him, then He will take him to Him. Like the hadith, Sahih hadith, the one who takes one step towards Allah, Allah takes many steps towards him. The one who walks towards Allah, Allah runs towards him. So it means, we have to make that effort. We have to make that mujahada. So we shouldn't misinterpret that, that outward actions are not important. Outward actions are important. They're a stage towards reaching to ikhlas.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, remember what we just talked about, ostentation and showing off, is that still applicable within your own household, given that obviously family members know your routine and sometimes your intention is to encourage them to do it if they're not as practicing? So this is now separate to the public and the outside world, but more just within your own house.
Yeah, I mean, it's related. We were talking about this earlier as well. I mean, there can be valid intentions, you know, for people to be told about actions, but it's a very fine line. You know, it's a very fine line, and the fact that family members, I mean, sometimes Riya can be worse amongst family members because uh, they Riya is all about caring about people what they think about you, and normally we care more about people who are relatives or family members or friends than we do about general public anyway. So sometimes Riya could be worse amongst family members. Obviously, when it comes to like husband and wife level, it's very difficult. You know, normally you will know each other, what each other do anyway. You know, but I'm talking about more extended family. You know, that can definitely come in. Riya can come in, so we have to be quite careful. But yeah, there can be intention of encouraging others, but it's a very thin line. So we have to look very carefully at our intention before falling down that road, you know. Like Imam Ghazali says, think, you know, save yourself before you think about saving others. But no, but having said that, it is important to, if people are doing good deeds, sometimes it is important for other people to know. Yeah, so it's just not like, you know, that thing about society. We don't want people to think we're in a corrupt society. There's no good people. You know. I think the most important thing is to look at your intentions before you do any action. You know, are you doing it for the sake of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, or are you simply doing it because of what people will say about it? That's the most important point when you start the action. Hmm? There's another aspect of if you've got family or friends that encourage each other to do good actions. I've mentioned that, you know, many times. That's absolutely fine. You know, so if there's a group of brothers or sisters that are friends or peers or family, and you know they're encouraging each other to do good actions. So let's fast tomorrow. Let's try and pray tahajjud tonight. Let's see who can do the most rakats. Things like that is fine. Because that's your sari'una fil khairat. They're competing to do good actions. So that's not considered to be riyah. Because in a way, if you think about it, normally in that type of situation, it's not really riyah. Because each person, they're outdoing each other. You see what I mean? So one's not normally much better than the other one or anything like that. Because they're all in it together, like, you know. Any other questions? How many weeks we have before Ramadan now? Is it 2 or 3?
3.
3 Sundays. Is it? Oh, 2 Sundays.
We've got next weekend, the weekend after, and then the third week will be Ramadan, inshallah.
So 2 before Ramadan.
2 clear weekends.
Two classes before Ramadan.
Yeah, so Sunday the 8th, Sunday the 15th, and then inshallah Sunday the 22nd will be. So we've only 2 weekends here, sorry, 2 weekends.
So we have 2 options. So I think it would be nice to start something new after Ramadan. So either we can have the normal dars and just summarize the rest of the book, or we can read it word for word, but then have longer dars, 2 longer darses, like extra long darses. Like I don't know how many pages there is now.
On the English translation, we've got 50 pages.
50 on the English. I've got.
What about continuing in Ramadan?
224, 190. So it's good 34 pages. So we'd have to do about 16, 17 pages Normally I do 2 pages, so I think the best thing would be to summarize it, or
We can do something in between, like we read it, but we summarize it.
Check if you do 16 pages, better not be showing off.
exactly.
So what if you do 2 lessons in Ramadan?
2 lessons Ramadan,
Yeah.
like Sundays.
But starting after Zuhur, maybe.
Yeah. Then you'd add maybe say you did 3, get the last week out.
Hmm.
You've got 5 then. That's 34. That's 7. 7 pages in.
Or in Ramadan we could change the time and do it like if just before iftar.
Yes.
And then do iftar together or something. Or is that inconvenient for people? Is that better for people? So like do it after Asr or something. Go up to Maghrib and then do iftar as well. No, not good for you.
Just two classes, isn't it? Just a 2
Probably 2, yeah, probably 2.
Just a 2 days.
Like a week, like a Friday would be alright.
Friday for iftar.
Saturday or Sunday is always okay.
Yeah, you could do Friday or a Monday or something.
Yeah, so 2 weekdays in Ramadan.
Because we normally have done on Monday evenings like an iftar anyway, so we could just do it, you know.
How
On
much
a
time
Monday.
do you have? Because it's quite late, isn't it? Maghrib.
Yeah, it's quite late.
Yeah, so you can start what, 7 or something.
Start like say an hour and a half before Maghrib and then, you know.
I've only had stuff here on Mondays.
No, I'm saying in the past, in Ramadan,
Just historically.
yeah, in Woolsey's we've done like once a week iftar, you know, like a gathering, zikr and stuff.
Where majority.
Should we do that? Should we finish it off in Ramadan first, so we got 4 weeks.
What's the last 10 days on? We get another Friday.
Last 10 days of Ramadan.
Because we know that's everything stops, isn't it? So how many Fridays will we have on Monday?
So Ramadan
We could just say
inshallah,
2. We could just say 2 anyway. Aim to finish it, you know.
we'll be starting on the 20th, which is a
Oh.
Friday. And then Itikaf starts on the 10th of August, inshallah.
So how many Mondays are in there?
Starting that. Monday the 22nd of, sorry, Monday the 30th, 23rd, Monday the 30th of July. And that's 2 August